Have you ever had that strange moment where you thought about someone right before they called you? Or maybe you woke up one morning feeling a wave of emotion that didn't seem to belong to you, and later realized the world was collectively mourning, celebrating, or fearing something. These moments might feel coincidental, but they touch on one of the most mind-bending ideas in philosophy, psychology, and even physics: collective consciousness. The idea that we as individuals might not be entirely separate minds, but rather connected threads in a vast, invisible web of shared awareness. Imagine this. Every thought, every dream, every emotion you've ever had might not begin and end within your brain. Instead, it could ripple outward, subtly influencing others. And in turn, you might be constantly receiving ripples from the thoughts and emotions of people you've never even met. What if individuality is an illusion and humanity is actually one vast, interconnected mind, experiencing itself through billions of unique perspectives? This concept of collective consciousness isn't new. Throughout history, mystics, philosophers, and scientists have tried to understand this strange sense of unity. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, proposed the idea of a collective unconscious, a deep mental reservoir shared by all humans, filled with symbols, memories, and archetypes that shape our behaviors and cultures. It's why myths from opposite sides of the world often share similar heroes, monsters, and moral lessons. Jung believed that these recurring patterns weren't just cultural coincidences, but manifestations of something deeper, the psyche of humanity itself. But as science advanced, thinkers began wondering whether this shared human connection might go beyond psychology. British biologist Rupert Sheldrake introduced a controversial but fascinating theory called morphic resonance. He proposed that there's a kind of field, like an invisible energy pattern, that connects all living beings. According to this idea, once something is learned by one group, it becomes easier for others to learn, as if information seeps into a shared field. Some experiments have even hinted that when one group of people solves a problem, people elsewhere can solve similar problems more quickly afterward, even without direct contact. While this theory remains debated, it forces us to ask, could the human mind be part of a larger, interconnected system of memory and awareness? To explore whether there's any measurable proof of collective consciousness, researchers have looked for correlations between human thought and large-scale global events. One intriguing example is the Global Consciousness Project, led by scientists at Princeton University. They used random number generators, machines that produce completely unpredictable data, and discovered that during moments of intense global focus, like major tragedies or celebrations, these random systems seem to become slightly less random. In other words, collective emotion appeared to subtly influence physical systems, suggesting that consciousness might ripple outward and interact with the world in mysterious ways. Skeptics argue that these findings could be statistical anomalies, but the results are hard to ignore. Even if they don't yet prove a global mind, they remind us that human consciousness might not be confined to the skull, that perhaps our thoughts interact with the fabric of reality itself. Today, we can observe a different kind of collective consciousness emerging right before our eyes. One fueled not by mystical energy, but by digital technology. Social media platforms have become an external nervous system for humanity, transmitting information, emotion, and behavior at lightning speed. Think about how a single viral trend, meme, or movement can unite millions of people across continents almost instantly. Within hours, entire populations can synchronize their focus, outrage, or joy, often without even realizing how connected they've become in a very real sense. We've created a digital reflection of collective consciousness, a vast, self-aware system made of human minds and algorithms. The global mind of the internet allows ideas to propagate like neurons firing across a planetary brain. But just like the human brain, this global network can be creative and empathetic, or chaotic and destructive. A single rumor or emotional post can trigger global panic. At the same time, movements for justice, climate awareness, and compassion can spread with incredible force. The collective consciousness of the digital age is both our greatest strength and our most unpredictable vulnerability. But this connection goes beyond technology. Even before the internet, history was full of moments where human behavior seemed to align without clear explanation. Think of scientific discoveries that happened simultaneously across the world, or cultural shifts that emerged almost overnight. It's as though ideas have their own kind of momentum. Once they reach a certain threshold in the collective mind, they manifest in multiple places at once. That if collective consciousness exists, how might it show up in our everyday lives? Perhaps it's in those subtle, intuitive moments when you just know something before it happens. Maybe it's why you can walk into a room and instantly feel tension or warmth without a word being spoken. Or why mass emotions, fear, excitement, sadness, seem to ripple through societies, even among people who have never met. Our nervous systems may be far more attuned to one another than we realize, constantly picking up on energetic, emotional, and subconscious cues. Dreams, too, offer a strange window into shared awareness. Across cultures and eras, people have reported collective dreams, visions, or symbols that appear to groups of individuals during times of crisis or transformation. Some anthropologists believe these experiences are the mind's way of aligning collective emotion and preparing for change. Even if we can't measure this yet, the feeling of connection during global moments, whether it's a tragedy that brings everyone to tears or a celebration that unites the world, reveals something deeply human. We are wired to resonate together. Of course, collective consciousness isn't always positive. When large groups of people share fear or anger, that energy can spiral into chaos. We've seen how misinformation, panic, or hatred can spread rapidly through societies, fueled by emotional contagion. Psychologists call this groupthink, when individuals suppress their own judgment to align with the crowd. Understanding collective consciousness means recognizing its shadow as well as its light. The same forces that allow empathy and unity can also drive division and extremism. The question, then, isn't whether we're connected, it's how consciously we choose to use that connection. If our minds are threads in a single, vast web, then every thought, word, and action we take sends ripples through that network. Our personal choices influence the collective, just as the collective influences us. This realization carries both power and responsibility. Science continues to evolve. We're learning that consciousness may be more fundamental than matter, that awareness itself could be the building block of the universe. If that's true, then perhaps the collective consciousness isn't limited to humanity. Maybe it extends across species, ecosystems, and even the cosmos. After all, everything in nature seems to operate in networks. From the communication between trees, through fungal threads underground to the synchronized behavior of animal flocks and insect colonies. Could human consciousness simply be another layer of this universal pattern? A continuation of the interconnected intelligence that governs all life? This brings us to a profound question about our future. If humanity is part of a shared consciousness, are we evolving toward a more unified global mind? Will our growing interconnectivity lead to greater empathy and cooperation, or will it amplify division and noise? The answer might depend on how aware we become of this hidden web and how intentionally we choose to shape it. Imagine a world where humans truly embrace their shared awareness, where education, technology, and spirituality all work together to foster understanding rather than conflict. A world where empathy is seen not as a choice, but as a natural expression of our interconnected being. In that world, solving global problems like climate change or inequality wouldn't seem impossible, because we'd finally see that the suffering of one is the suffering of all. But the opposite future is also possible, one where disconnection, fear, and isolation fragment our collective mind into chaos. The path we take may depend on whether we can wake up to the truth that has been whispering through every age, every culture, and every scientific breakthrough. We are not separate. We are parts of one immense consciousness, exploring itself through countless eyes, hearts, and voices that next time you feel a sudden emotion you can't explain or a sense of connection that defies logic, pause and consider maybe it's not just your mind at work. Maybe it's the universe thinking through you. The question isn't whether we're all connected. The question is, can we learn to feel it, live it, and shape it wisely?
If you find this video informative, please hit the like button, subscribe this channel and feel free to share your comments.